Hi, my name is Victoria Bond, and I'm very excited to tell you about two one-act operas that we're going to be presenting at Symphony Space this coming April. My Last Duchess by composer Theodore Wiprud and LibrettistTom Dulack, and The Clever Mistress by composer librettist Robert Sirota. They'll be performed on April 23rd and 30th in the Leonard Nimoy Thalia Theater in Symphony Space. And in just a moment, we're going to hear from the composers and the librettists talking about these works. We look forward to seeing you in April.
I remember the day you came to me and said, would I be interested in writing the libretto for an opera? And I said, yeah, I'd really be interested. And you said, well, it's 12 minutes long. And you called it a vest pocket opera. And I said, thanks a lot. My first opera libretto is going to be 12 minutes long. And I immediately thought of My Last Duchess because it was a piece that I always wanted to stage somehow, dramatic monologue of Browning's. And then you told me that we had to have 4 voices, and this was a monologue. So I decided to bring the Duchess alive out of her portrait, and then have the auditor of the Duke's monologue be her lover. And since he's there arranging the marriage of what's going to be the next Duchess, we could have a character, we could have that character appear, and we had four characters. And then I remember we tried to do the whole thing just with Browning's poem, and that didn't work, so then we began going into the other poems, other monologues of Browning, for dialogue. And it's now 99 and 44, 100% pure Browning.
Right, there's the stray word that...
The stray word that's not Browning, that's Dulack. You know, yeah. They leap out of the page.
Yeah, it was quite amazing to me as you kept suggesting more poetry of Browning, how well these different poems fit together. It seems like there are some themes that run through his work that you know, refer to each other. There's, you know, so we're working with this poem, My Last Duchess. There's one about the Duchess in flight.
Yeah,
you know, a different
that
Duchess.
We took a big chunk out of it.
Yeah. So even though they have different verse forms, often the subject of them seems to be so similar that we could actually find dialogue, speech material, arias for all 4 characters.
Yeah. And the poetry really obviously spoke somehow to your musical sense.
Yeah.
Right away.
Well, the fact, first of all, the one poem of Robert Browning that I know is My Last Duchess. And when you mentioned it, it was, you know, I knew exactly what you were talking about and how operatic it would be. So that was a terrific moment of discovery. But the other wonderful thing about it was to realize that it was set in a specific time, a specific place, a historic group of characters, historic incident, the supposition that there was a murder. And that led me to think about that time and place, Ferrara in the mid-16th century. And my initial thought was, what was the music these characters would have heard, and how can that inform the music that I write? And the more I started thinking about that music, which, you know, it's the Italian Renaissance, it's some of the great composers that we study when we're learning to compose. I ended up spending an entire summer marinating in the music of the Italian Renaissance, especially the madrigals, the secular music, the music of the court, not of the church, because this is a very secular story. It was just one of the great summers of my life, musically, actually, to return to that music and focus especially on the music of Cipriano de Rore, who was the court composer at this time and place. And I composed what I thought of as just a study for this piece, using a poem of Browning that you had supplied. And that turned out to be the overture to the piece. I composed a madrigal as much as I could in the style of de Rore, taking this Browning poem as the text. And it turned out to be the source material, all the melodies for the opera itself I could find in this madrigal that I'd written, so focused on de Rore. So our overture to the piece is actually an a cappella vocal work instead of an orchestral overture. And that really, I think, places the piece in the Italian Renaissance. This whole approach to expressing a text with 4 or more voices, all singing in counterpoint, none of them coming out as the solo voice, enabled me to write this overture. Then the challenge, of course, was to create an opera where you have individual characters, and they do have to sing individually, which takes us a little bit musically out of the 16th century and into the 17th century. But the idea of My Last Duchess determined the whole language of the piece musically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard your first, I remember when I heard your first composed music, your orchestral pieces, and I frankly had trouble with them. And well, this is deep, or this is this, or this is that. But then I heard you gave me a CD of that long poem that you put to music, the singing.
The
thing.
Maya Angelou?
Yeah. And I remember sending you an email. I said you were born to write for the opera.
Oh,
because
I'll have to find that.
No, you're immediately when I heard you writing for the voice, I said this is great stuff, and I still feel the same way. I mean, obviously, still feel the same way.